Welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled comic book podcast where two fans and two non-comic fans talk about controversial and noteworthy comic books. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
We've made it to the end.
And we are finally concluding our Marvel extravaganza, right?
I hope so.
Do you mean our Miss Marvel extravaganza or our Captain Marvel extravaganza? Or our
Both?
Marvel
Comics
boy?
extravaganza. We're never doing any Marvel comics ever again. Marvel's done. DC all the way from now on, baby.
Is Marvel vs. Capcom about this character?
Yeah, the whole game is about this one character.
Is Carol in Marvel vs. Capcom? I'm curious about it. I haven't played.
I think so. Actually, I saw at my school's gaming club, I saw some kids playing Marvel vs. Capcom, which is why I brought it up. And I saw someone, I'm like, is that binary? I didn't go over.
I was thinking of the 3 roster. I don't know about the Infinite roster.
Also, that might be a joke. I saw offline, but I might as well say on the air. It's ironic that Carol Danvers is such a SJW hero, but her codename used to be binary.
That is a pretty good joke. So, we are going to talk about...
Not Carol.
Not Carol. We are going to talk the...
Did I read the wrong thing? I'm just
This has
kidding.
actually been requested several times, and I've wanted to do this book for pretty much forever. And we're going to talk about Miss Marvel by G. Willow Wilson, the newest Miss Marvel book, and the current character, Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan.
Wow.
Yes.
An actual colored woman.
Yes. So...
We haven't spotted those since Monica. And
We always
like,
read comics in color, Darryl.
What? Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to give a little bit of backstory on why Kamala is such an important and interesting character. And she's interesting in the way she fits into this because she is actually also an editorially created character, but not to hold on to a brand, more to diversify Marvel. So 2 editors, Stephen Wacker and Sana Amanat, wanted to create a Muslim American character, and Kamala, as far as I could tell, is actually the first ongoing Big 2 Muslim American character to have their own book. Whereas, like, we talked about... I don't actually know if we've talked about any Muslim characters on the show, like, ever.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yes, so she debuted in early 2014 with her own book, and she was, once the editors had the idea that they wanted to create a Muslim like teenage girl, that they Sana Amanat is a Pakistani American from Jersey, and they approached G. Willow Wilson, who had done a couple like fill-in issues and some small stuff, but she came to notoriety because of a graphic novel she published called Cairo, and they approached her to kind of flesh out the backstory. And she's a Muslim woman who, the thing that was really interesting about G. Willow Wilson is she was actually raised by atheists and later on in life converted to Islam.
I actually was reading about her because after we read this, I was so interested, and I'm like, who wrote this? And she's from Jersey, too. And she's like, it was just like, I'm going to go convert to Islam and go to live in Egypt.
Yeah, and the thing that's so interesting about that is a lot of this book, and we're going to get into it a lot more, but it's not just like her Muslim faith is very much a part of the character, but it's done in my opinion at least, a non-traditional way where it is very much like a struggle with her faith and her like traditions and stuff like that. And the fact that you have a Pakistani American who felt like very out of place because she grew up in a white suburb as the editor, and a converted Islam woman writing it, you get an interesting interplay between like her family's traditions and like the different character roles, and it's a very interesting, like, unique book in that regard. And one of the things that is really important and why I've always wanted to do this book is because this book was one of Marvel's first real big pushes to be more inclusive. And like we see a lot of this now, but this was one of the first books in recent times that Marvel really pushed to a female audience. And I remember like being in comic shops with a bunch of like old guys being like, why are they pushing all these ladies on us? Like, and like things that were like very not inclusive.
All these
not
one
great.
ladies.
Well, what was that thing you heard one of the comic shops say? Like they should like hold off on this Miss Marvel thing after like the whole war on terror is over or something like that?
Yeah, the owner of my old comic
what?
shop. So the owner of my old comic shop was like this old guy. And after he said this, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm going to go to another comic shop. Because he said, I have no problem, Muslim characters, like, that's cool. But I feel like, shouldn't they wait until this whole terrorism thing dies down a little bit? And I was like, Jesus. So there's a reason why when you have an editorially driven character like this, I feel like it's more important than we want to keep the license. It's more like they wanted to send a message to not straight white guys. Like, hey, comics are for everybody. And since Kamala was originally going to be launched as like, I think Willow Wilson said she had like a 10-issue pitch, and she became like this huge breakout star. She became one of their biggest digital sellers. And since then, we've seen a lot more Marvel books like this. We've seen like Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, The Unstoppable Wasp, like a lot of targeted to women readers books, especially like teens, that like Marvel's line is almost like unrecognizable from like 10 years ago as far as like the inclusivity of it.
Well, we already touched upon this when we read Civil War 2, and we didn't know who any of the fucking characters were because they're all like new, young minority and female characters. And that's a lot of that is due to success in this Marvel.
Yeah, and now not every single one has been, actually very few of them have been even close to Kamala's success. And it's, you know, some of them you could argue are like derivative or just not as interesting, but like I personally think that a lot of them are super, super great, and I love a lot of these characters. And the universe definitely, it might be inaccessible to like the, you know, like the old established fans who are like, how come, you know, who's this? But for I know a lot of new fans, like my wife, for example, didn't really read comics, and Miss Marvel was one of the first books that she was like, wow, like I like this a lot.
Yeah. I was gonna say it also helps. Like it's just really well. It's like well written. Like it's fun to read. Like
Yes.
it's not just like I'm like part of it is the breath of fresh air. I'm like, oh, this is actually a very different take, and it's refreshing. But it's also just like it was fun to read, and the fact that you said that she was originally writing graphic novels is interesting because it reminded me more of a graphic novel sometimes in like the slice of life, even the like just the style of it.
Yeah.
And then it'd be like superhero stuff.
Yeah, and to add to Phil's view of, like about like his testimony, this was the first comic I've read in a long time where when I got down to like the end of the issue, I was like, wait, it's like ending right now? Whereas like with everything else we've been reading, all Captain Marvel, I kind of like, how much longer do I have to go? I want to like look ahead and see how many pages I have left.
I actually didn't. I didn't check how far you guys wanted me to read, so I was just so into it. I just kept reading. I was like, this is so good.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
The same thing happened to me. I'm like, I'll read one issue before bed, and then I read 4 issues.
It was hard to put down.
Yeah, and this is actually pretty timely because Willow Wilson's run is actually about to end. I think she has like 1 or 2 issues left, which will bring her entire run to about 60 issues, which we've talked about how modern comics, like, they keep getting rebooted and, like, you don't really get creative teams on for a long time. And, like, Wilson had a very long run, and it's not like she's getting shunted off the book. She was like, I had ideas for 10 issues, and I've like, it's time for Kamala to go under somebody else's pen for a bit.
Yes.
And like it's still been great. Like I don't want it to seem like she's run out of ideas because it's still up until where I've read, it's still been fantastic. But you know, it's a testament to like a lot of the things we complain about modern comics and stuff. Miss Marvel uses very well. And the last thing that I want to say about the book, the creative team, is it's also Adrian Alphona is on the art. And the reason why that's really important is because Adrian did pencil all of Brian K. Vaughan's Runaways, which is considered like maybe the best teen superhero comic book like ever written by a lot of people. And getting an artist like that on this book also immediately gave it, at least in my opinion, a level of like credibility and like character design choices. And the costume is done by Jamie McElvey, but like the actual penciling of the book is like they took one of their most beloved teen hero artists and put it on this like risky move, and I think it really paid off.
Wow.
So it's good. So let's get into it. We are going to be covering the first 7 issues of Miss Marvel.
And so it starts with Kamala, Miss Marvel, in a store. You know, there's one thing I want to point out about this whole thing, which is kind of funny, is how we're reading all like we read a lot of Marvel or the Marvel namesake oriented stuff where it's like Captain Marvel, and then Carol Danvers, and neither of them have really anything to do with Kamala's story.
Yeah, none of that anything to do with each other, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, which in a way, like, I kind of appreciated that this wasn't just a like how you have a lot of with older comics like a superhero tie-in to be like, hey, look how, I mean, it still does happen like a couple issues later, but the first 5 issues are all Kamala.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about like another superhero coming in and then stealing the spotlight.
And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this here is because, as we'll learn very shortly, Carol Danvers is Kamala's favorite superhero, and that's kind of like where it's more of like a fangirl-esque relationship, and less like, oh, they saved me and gave their lives, and I must honor their legacy. It's more circumstantial.
It really is like a teen comedy a lot of the time, and it's fun. It's like fun in that way where it's like. It reminds me of like some Spider-Man stuff I've seen too, where it's like
it is very Spider-Man-esque.
Very Spider-Man-esque.
Just like
kept thinking about that.
High school stuff, and it's her being like, "Fuck you, mom," or "Fuck you, dad."
The stakes aren't like that high to the point where it's like the teen comedy gets in the way, where it's like you guys should not be joking about that. It's like like for our Patreon bonus exclusive stuff, when we're reading Heroes in Crisis, the comedy in that sometimes comes out of left field, and you're like, "Whoa, like don't be making jokes right now." Whereas here, like everything fits very naturally, and it is
most of the drama is actually just family drama. And
and that's another reason why this works, whereas other Captain Marvels don't. Is because they always try to make Captain Marvel has to be important. He has to be the Superman figure, and like Darryl says, like you keep getting told why Marvel's supposed to be heroic and stuff like that, and like it gets, we've all fucking read stories like that where you're told this hero is important, but like
they're so great, wow,
but like stuff like this is why Spider-Man is an example of like how it should be done, because like Ryan says, Spider-Man's one of the best characters, can't compare him, but I think it's a good point why the best example works so well. Spider-Man, he started out as just a relatable character, and he showed his heroic qualities through stories, like that's the story where 37 was where he had to lift the giant thing off his back.
I think you mean 33.
33, yeah. Those stories happen because he was so relatable to readers that they liked him well enough that he was able to inspire them over time. They had to be shoved down the throat. This character, you have to love him. He's inspiring. He's heroic.
Yeah, and it's like it shows the humble beginnings because Kamala starts by just like she's in a store with her friend looking at meat that she can't have
because she's Muslim.
Yep, and then we have like the typical like jock and pretty girl that's attached to his arm come in, and what I like about this is maybe it's because I've just been like so infused with like Stan Lee things where like they come in and they'd be such huge assholes. Instead, they're just like very passively racist. About this.
Yeah, it's so subtle. Like they're well-meaning. They're not like, "Hey, nerd, want to fucking eat like you wanna get a
eat
smiley?"
my shit, nerd.
He's like he invites them to the party, and they're like, yeah, maybe not."
But they say things like, "Are your people even like? Can you come to parties like this?"
Yes,
and like stuff like that.
Nobody's going to honor kill you, right? I'm just concerned. She says.
It's more like an answer in real life where they're not necessarily like fuck you, but they're insensitive the entire time.
Yes,
right.
And one thing that I really like about this scene too is Kamala's older friend Nakia, who like used to go by Kiki, but is now becoming like a more traditional, wants to use like a more traditional name. She's like, these people are being really racist, and Kamala's like, I just thought they were being nice. Like she's like naive, where she doesn't realize that like that passive racism.
Yeah, her friend says, "Oh, you're such a baby with Kamala. She's only nice to be mean."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and Kamala's like, "But she's so adorable and happy." And Nakia says, "You are not allowed to defend Zoe Zimmer."
And this is when she just passively exposits that even your sad nerd obsession with the Avengers is less irritating. It's like, she's a fangirl.
And then the last panel on the page is like, it's Bruno, the shop owner, who's also Kamala's friend. He's trading places with his friend.
He's not the owner. He just works there.
I mean, yeah, he works there. He's trading like a shift with his friend Chatty Bob. And it's small details like this where it's like, you don't need to do this to show that he's like who he trades his shift with, but it helps the world building to be like, oh, okay, this is like a very normal
place. It's a normal place.
Yeah.
And so when they do stuff with it, it's like, oh, this is part of the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Then we cut to something not normal. Oh, I guess it's normal, but not.
It's a little bit not normal.
Also, I forgot to say too, like one thing I really like about the art and why it reminded me a lot of a graphic novel is it gets like really cutesy a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they zoom out, their faces are like smiley faces.
Like and sometimes like the :3.
Yeah. Just 2 dots for eyes and just like the little mouth. And then we cut to like the Avengers fighting some alien to protect a bunch of My Little Ponies.
Unicorns.
But they all have dope faces on.
Yeah, and we find out that it's Kamala writing her fan fiction. And her mom's just asking about that. And she's like, my fanfic almost has 1,000 upvotes on freakingcool.com. And her mom's like, I didn't understand one single word of that sentence. Then they go down and you get more of like her interactions with the family where it's like her brother is very like, he's trying to be...
very devout.
Yes, he's a very devout Muslim, to the point where even his dad like makes fun of him.
His dad's like, you get a fucking job, and he's like, money earned from a profession that offends Allah has no merit. I refuse to profit from usury, unlike some people, because usury is like getting interest. So the dad works at a bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the dad refutes with, "My job at the bank allows you to sit here at home contemplating eternity."
And I immediately am drawn into this family dynamic because I feel like it's very cliched that it's like, oh, this teen is bucking tradition that their parents are pushing on them.
Yes.
But and I think this comes from like Wilson's experience too, where her older brother is like so much more devout than the family, and the family they still practice, they go to the mosque, they have a relationship, with the people there, but it's still like they're not cliched devout.
They're more like Muslims you meet in America.
In Jersey City. What I also find interesting too is the brother being super religious is also something that does happen, where you have the first generation comes over, they assimilate to American culture, and then the next generation doesn't feel like they have a place because they're like, I don't fit in here because I still have my background, but I'm not like they don't feel like Kamala too. She doesn't feel like she has a place, and sometimes that makes them go full devout because they're like, my identity is Muslim,
my heritage,
my heritage. And so it's interesting that they have the two kids be like trying to figure out their place in society, and one of them does it by going back to tradition, and Kamala becomes a superhero.
Yeah, and so Kamala wants to go to a party tonight, but her dad won't let her leave because there's going to be boys and drinking.
And I really like this internal monologue here because this is where we start to see like how she has a hard time fitting in because of her cultural difference from the norm, where she's like, why am I the only one who gets signed out of health class? Why do I have to bring I don't know how to pronounce it. Pakoras to school for lunch? Why am I stuck with the weird holidays? Everybody else gets to be normal. Why can't I?
Yep. And so she sneaks out and she goes to the party where everyone is, and then just that nice pretty girl is just super racist to her the whole time. Where she's like,
well, they give her alcohol.
Yeah, this was when I was like, oh, the jock is actually like a real asshole. When he's like, he has just orange juice and there's actually vodka in it. After she drinks it, he tells her, I'm like, wow, you're really...
Yeah, and then the other jocks are like laughing.
What's really it's kind of, I like the setup here because Bruno comes in and says like, oh, the assholes while they're drunk. So like, they were kind of assholes while they were in regular circumstances.
Yeah.
Now they're drunk, they're like fully like, they're doing whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Bruno is very protective over Kamala. He's like, you shouldn't be here. I don't want you to get in trouble. And she's like, you sound just like my parents. And then she points out, too bad you're not Pakistani. Otherwise, they totally throw me at you. And he's just like, too bad.
I love that.
She marches off, and then it's suddenly Jersey City gets swept with a weird blue mist.
This is when I was like,
everybody.
oh no, I've read too many comics. This must be Terrigen Mist.
Yeah, so and here's the cool thing, like this book is a tie-in to an event in humanity where they release Terrigen Mist all around, but you don't have to read or know about that event at all to know it's like also important is that this event is causing Kamala to get her powers. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Especially because we get the audience surrogate here because Kamala's like breathing it in. And she's just like, oh God, what's going on? Am I drunk? Can you get drunk from one sip of something? Oh no, everything's all like hazy. I'm drunk. I'm totally drunk. And she passes out.
Yeah, and then she has a dream where she sees Captain Marvel and Captain America
and Iron Man. The three of them are like the ones she like fanboys the most over.
Yeah,
and there's like sloths with wings and fish
and they're speaking Urdu.
Yeah, they're like faith avatars. They're coming down to her, and they're telling her that she's about to inherit like a great power, which is the Terrigen Mist has turned her into an Inhuman.
Oh, and not only that, but I know I keep harking on these specific lines, but the way they describe Kamala's like faith and personality, she talks about how like, oh, like everyone was being so mean to me because they saw that once I snuck out, they thought that gave them the right to like make fun of my family, and like because I'm ditching the dumb inferior.
That
brown
was a really
people
cool
culture.
thing that she brought up too. That's like, just because that she disagrees with them doesn't give permission to other people to like bash on her culture.
And she's like, I grew up here, I'm from Jersey, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. And her vision of Carol is like, who do you want to be? And she says, right now I want to be beautiful and awesome and butt kicking and less complicated. I want to be you.
Except I would wear the classic politically incorrect costume and kick butt and giant wedge heels.
And then she comes out of the fucking egg, Inhuman egg, and comes out as Miss Marvel.
As Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel. So you're like, okay.
Yeah, I was pretty because I didn't know if she was gonna come in Inhuman. I figured it was Terrigen Mists, but then I'm like, is Ms. Marvel like an Inhuman?
It's hard too because it's like the cocoon is drawn as a black orb. I think like every artist draws the cocoons kind of differently, or at least like in Civil War II it looked different.
Yeah, but like I said in that last episode, now this is an era where no artist consists of any other artist.
I think it's also intentionally kept kind of vague because a lot of this early book is Kamala being like, what's wrong with me? She keeps Googling what's going on. And then in the second trade is when she actually meets with the Inhumans. And they basically, because I hadn't read any of these events or anything at the time, this was my first exposure to this stuff. And when they explain it to Kamala, I'm like, oh, that sounds like some Marvel bullshit.
Yeah. And so the second issue begins with, also notice no fighting in the first issue.
Yeah.
Which is always a plus for me, is you're just building character stuff. So Kamala, like, she comes out of the egg and she's like, wow, oh man, I'm going to puke. And then she starts like kind of morphing between herself and the Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel. And she looks all like stringy and weird.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like she gets really noodly.
Yeah, her powers are that she's basically like a shapeshifter who can stretch, which is why Ryan likes her so much.
I love stretchy characters. What can I say?
I thought her power was actually pretty interesting, to be honest. I was like, I don't know if we've seen a true shapeshifter in any stuff we've read for the show, like that can change their form to whatever they want it to be, kind of like not just being a plastic man, but like she can look like someone different, just like
she also her trademark thing is she calls it embiggening, where she really just gets big fists and punch people. And it's different than like the Mystique, like I look like this, I look like this. She actually can morph her body however she wants.
Yeah. Ironically, she is closer to Plastic Man, who can stretch into pretty much anything, more than like Mr. Fantastic, who can just stretch his body to be
right, because she can just become like a couch or something, and I'm like, that's interesting.
and the art, we talked about the art, like the smiley face and stuff like that. Just like Plastic Man was always more of a comedy book because he could turn into couch and stuff like that. The art suits this too, because when she turns into couches, the art really works for the comedy there.
Yes, like his art goes so well with her being able to like stretch and get big hands and So she goes down to like a wharf, and
it's where the party was going on, I think.
Yep, and there's the drunk jock with Zoe.
I love it. It's just him going, and I just called to say I love Zoo, and she's like, don't call me Zoo. It's just great.
Yeah, and then as Kamala's seeing this, she instinctively, right now she's like Kamala, and she can't like activate her powers, but she sees it, she instinctively turns into Captain Marvel. Or Carol Danvers.
And we also, a nice little touch is we see another Marvel hero just fly away in the distance, and they're blurry. We don't even know who it is, but it's just like, see, there's other stuff going on, and Kamala it doesn't matter, you know?
Well, it's like what Phil always bitches about. Why isn't every hero here every second?
Yeah.
And
because why wouldn't superheroes fly around while there's mist hitting a giant
city? Because
city?
Iron Man is gonna save some drunk jock instead of like going to fight the big monster.
I find it crazy that she's the only superhero in Jersey City. This is like right next to Manhattan. And there's like 19,000 superheroes in Manhattan.
Because everyone becomes a superhero and then moves to Manhattan.
Yeah, can you blame them?
Yeah, you go where the jobs are. She starts like shrinking down, and as this is going on, the jock is trying to kiss Zoe, and he accidentally gets her thrown into the lake. Mm-hmm. And so Kamala sees this, and she thinks to herself, he's drunk and she's panicking. If he jumps in, they'll both drown. And she remembers an ayah from the Quran about how whoever kills one person is as if they killed all of mankind, but whoever saves one person is as he has saved all of mankind. So she's using her faith as like a motivator as she begins to go into the water and to pull Zoe out with her
makes her hand
hands.
really big and scoops up her and like all the like gross garbage at the bottom of the lake.
Yeah, and people gather around her and they're like, wow, this is awesome.
Miss Marvel, you got your old costume.
Yeah. And then someone's like, not to sound lame, but what's with your arms? It's like so giant.
Her hand is like 6 feet wide.
Yeah. And she runs away from it. And we get a lot of exposition. It's really hard to try and think about like what to cover because there's so many interesting facets, but we're never going to get through them. Like all 7 of these issues.
Yeah, it's just a really interesting just story. Like honestly, like
yes.
We're done. Just gotta read it yourself.
Yeah, there's a problem with reading good books, which is why we don't do it as often as we probably should.
Yeah, because
just go fucking read the book yourself. And, like,
most lines are interesting. In
Yeah,
this.
like that. That's like what we're gonna read every fucking page, talk about what's every.
Yeah,
Stop listening. Fuck you.
Turn some shit off. Go fucking buy his book and that. And
Yeah, you really should. Like, that's the real short of this. Is you really should just read this book yourself if you have not. It is really great. She sneaks back home though, and her brother catches her, but she's able to like shift back in time to Kamala.
But she doesn't realize she shifted, so when he comes in, she's like, I can explain. I'm not just this tall, blonde superhero. And he's like, no, you're just like, you're just regular Kamala, but you're wearing a smelly sweatshirt you bought from a bum.
Yeah, and
she bought off a bum between pounds.
yeah, and her parents found out that like she snuck out, and they get in an argument, and they have to ground her, but she's like, she can't tell them that she's a superhero.
Well, but the thing is though, that I find refreshing about the scene is they don't just have like a fight. She's like, I'm sorry I disobeyed you, but I can't tell you. And her mom's like, you have to tell us. And like, I just think about like every time I was a teenager, my parents would be like, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing, get away from me. You know, like, and I feel like it's not a fight. It's more like they're disappointed in her and she's like upset she can't tell them.
But she's resolved to be a hero. That's how issue 2 ends. Also, no fighting again, just saving.
Just saving.
But we'll get into the overarching plot soon.
Yes.
All right, so the next issue 3, opens up with the news being like, tragedy averted in Jersey City when Miss Marvel rescued a teenager. But Miss Marvel hasn't used that costume in like years, so could this be a copycat?
I love that they interview Zoe, and she's like, if Miss Marvel hadn't been there, I would be totally dead right now. I feel like I've learned so much from her about being responsible and helping people and stuff.
I don't want to say it's been years because I'm pretty fucking sure it's been like a year since she swapped costumes at this point, like literally in real time. So, like, it's like people would have assumed in real life that she would have just abandoned the character that costume as an experiment and moved back to her original one. But here they treat like, oh, she's been out of that costume for fucking decades.
Yeah. So while she's googling it, I just want to say that there's newspapers behind her, like school newspapers from the Fluffington Post, and one's an editorial by Dr. Schnoz, and the other one has a headline: "High School Cannibalism Experiment Proves Disastrous." And I like
dumb.
the little touches there.
Yeah. So she's trying to figure out what her powers are. She can't. She keeps Googling it. And there's a joke somewhere here where she's like, every time she Googles polymorph, she gets a World of Battlecraft page. And I'm like, that's pretty funny. It's a World of Warcraft spell. And then her and her brother are going to mosque on Saturday. They have a youth lecture with Sheikh Abdullah. And it's a lot of what we probably expect from traditional, like Muslim school, right? It's like
the girl, you can't see the girls' faces during the.
There's a partition between the men and the women in the mosque.
But even the way they do this dichotomy is really good because they put up this partition so like he can't see them and they can't see him. But when they show all the girls, one's asleep, one's just sitting on her phone. Like even though they're in this traditional setting, they're still teens.
I thought this was really interesting too because I was thinking like when they have a book with like a Muslim main character, they're just going to be like, you know, Islam has no traditional like men women like gender roles. It's just completely progressive, you know, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that they're like, no, like there's still a lot of that stuff too, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's just different.
Yeah.
The story can only be written by a Muslim woman because if it was too traditional, it will seem stereotypical, and if it was too non-traditional, it seems disrespectful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's something I've always like thought about like personally. Like actually, this is topical for today.
Not magical.
I don't know if you guys know. No, but like tomorrow being February 1st, because we're recording this on the 31st of January. Is National Hijab Day, and like a lot of people at my school are wearing hijabs tomorrow for like solidarity or something, I guess. And it's interesting because it's a topic that I've thought about a lot. Where I'm like, it's one of those things that's like it should be a woman's choice, whatever she wants to wear. But at the same time, I know historically it comes from a patriarchal place to not to have women not show themselves because it's your fault then if a man because he can't control himself when he sees your hair.
And
you know
Zoe
I mean?
actually mentions that in issue 1, where she's like, I love your pretty headscarf, unless someone's forcing you to wear that, right? That's your choice. It's not like some man forcing you to wear that. And she's like, no, like, I want to wear it. We live in America, you know, I don't have to. And, like, that misunderstanding or, like, the questioning is right up front in the first 10 pages of this book.
And that's why I like this a lot, because I'm like, I find that a really like hard topic for me to think about, and it's like interesting that this is like there's stuff does exist, but like people have different there's a spectrum of people who have different beliefs about this, like everything.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
Oh, One important thing to mention, so she leaves and goes to Bruno's shop again, and we forgot to mention it. The parents found out she snuck out because Bruno called them and said, I'm really worried about Kamala. She left this party, and she's not answering her phone. I hope she's okay, and she's really mad at him.
So Kamala like leaves before when Bruno's like, hey, what's up? And she's like, fuck you.
Yeah, which is another great touch. Just shows you how well this is written, where it's like that's an interesting dynamic with her friend, where she's like, you're snitching on me when I'm trying to do this, despite him just really trying to look out for her.
There's a thing going on, like Bruno trying to be like the nice guy, but Kamala's like doesn't want any of it. Stop trying to be like the perfect guy. Like
stop trying to control me, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then we get like a slight like tease here because it goes to like science class and Bruno's working on a biokinetic polymer that stretches.
This is what I was like. Yeah, I'm like, wow, he's making stretchy material. Wonder if that'll ever come in handy. And then also we get another foreshadowing here where his brother Vic is like, I need $100. Can you just steal it from your job at the convenience store? And he's like, no.
It's not stealing because you work there.
And so Kamala starts to freak out at school, physically, like her hand starts to shrink and then grow, and then she goes to the locker room and smashes it accidentally.
Yeah, she like grows really big and smashes into the ceiling.
And she figures out she can just transform into like her mom. Like she can transform into any person she wants.
Well, she said, "Oh, my mom." Okay, I was totally going for Taylor Swift. This is getting Freudian.
Yeah. And then so she gets caught breaking the locker room, gets detention, and then Bruno wants to talk after school, so she stays to talk to him, and she goes to the convenience store.
He wants to talk at the convenience store. Like he shoots her a message, and she decides that there's no putting it off. Like she can't ignore him forever.
Right.
One little just art touch is usually stuff like this when you have like text messages or pictures on the wall, the letterer adds in and it looks very like pasted on text, but this is all hand drawn by the artist. So it looks, even though it looks hand drawn like on a phone, it doesn't pull you out of it like normally it would.
That's one of the craziest things, like how he writes on boxes and on store windows. He doesn't try to write like how you would actually write it. If you're a company, it's all just handwritten stuff where he's like, GMOs, the cereal, instead Cheerios.
Yeah, it's more of it's very much an indie approach.
Yes.
Yeah, it really does look like an indie book sometimes. And so she goes to the convenience store to meet with Bruno, and there's a guy with a mask and a gun and arguing with him, and he's like, oh shit, someone's sticking up the store, I gotta call the cops. And then the phone battery's dead. It goes LOL, no battery. From Acme. And then she's like, I'm a superhero, I gotta just do something, I am 911. And then meanwhile in the store, you hear the masked man saying, I thought you weren't supposed to be here, I thought Chatty Bob had this shift. And he's like, I switched with him, you're lucky I don't call the cops on you, where'd you get that gun anyway? And we kind of can figure it's his brother.
And he says, don't worry, it's not even loaded.
Yeah, and then he says, when the inventor, this is what Vic says, the inventor comes, things are going to change. You'll start treating me with respect. And then this is when Kamala busts through the store as Captain Marvel.
Not Miss Marvel, the one she was in before. Now she's Captain Marvel. Too much to Phil's confusion, because we never did a book with Carol Danvers.
Yeah, right before we started recording this, I was like, I have all these files saved as Miss Marvel, but we've been doing Captain Marvel, right? And they're like, no, we've never done Captain Marvel. And so she has a giant fist and smashes the counter, grabs the assailant and squeezes him. And she's like, I'll put you down if you promise to never come back again. And then she drops him. And when he falls and hits the ground, his gun goes off and shoots her. Mm-hmm. And
she's bleeding. So
so obviously she gets shot. She's not Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And Bruno seems to be shocked. He's like, Miss Captain, whoever, this is me. You're shot. And that's where it ends.
Yeah. So next issue opens with Kamala's view. She's on the floor, bleeding out. Bruno's over her, trying to see if she's okay. The brother comes over and he runs off.
Yeah. Bruno tells him to go. It's like, get out of here.
Yeah. And so then she transforms back into Mall while holding on to Bruno and saying, it's me.
Yeah, because she's like, you can't let the police come here. Like, they can't know it's actually, like, me, because I'll get in trouble.
Yeah. So then Bruno's like, what the fuck's happening? And they realize when Kamala switches forms, she heals.
So when she goes back to her normal form, like her Kamala.
And we immediately break this tension where we're like, is she gonna die? And then she turns back and she's like, oh, I'm healed. And Bruno goes, where's the bullet? And she goes, I think it fell in my pants. And then she like pulls it out of her butt.
Yeah, it shows like her face as she's reaching into the back of her pants looking for the bullet, and then pulls out like so like happy, like ta-da.
So he's like, why you miss fucking Captain Marvel / Miss Marvel / Carol Danvers / whatever. And she's just like, I was like nervous, so I became her like instinctually. I couldn't control my shapeshifting, and it kind of makes sense to just keep being her now that I was her. And Bruno's like, no.
And she talks about how like everybody's expecting like a real superhero with perfect hair and big boots, not just me, Kamala Khan from Jersey. And this is where it's really clear that Bruno has a thing for it, because he's like, you're the coolest girl I've ever met. You're smart and you're funny and you're good at video games. And she's like, go on.
Yeah. And he's blushing. And then so the cops arrive and she's like, I need to like hide my identity, but she tries to change it to Captain Marvel, but she's too wounded from the bullet, so she's not done healing. And so Bruno throws her a sleeping mask. I like that she says, am I hiding my identity or taking a nap?
Yeah, she cuts holes in it, so she's like, it's like a domino mask, like Robin, but like pink.
She stands there with a big stupid smile on her face.
Yeah, and then the cops were like, "Oh, you're not a superhero," and she shows like she can grow large.
This is again like it's straight out of a comedy. Like the cops are like just like kind of just they look like they're out of like a
they're very
cartoon.
like this cop's like so stoic. His expression doesn't change the whole time as she grows and like busts the ceiling with her head. Yeah, and he's like, "Okay, I believe you."
Yeah,
and this is when I was like, every time we read anything now, I just constantly go back to Civil War. I'm like, people need to be registered. Like, you can't have
because Kamala keeps breaking shit. She keeps breaking so much shit every time she embiggens. How much property damage is that going to cause?
Imagine being a cop and you go to an armed robbery and you're like, you don't just have to worry about maybe people with guns. You're like, people might just be able to explode themselves or like shoot laser beams.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But they take it very like casually.
They're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, expect a subpoena for today's security tapes. I'll be keeping an eye on this place. And then like another guy's like, costume kids these days, I tell you.
So, she goes back to her house. What does she wear?
She's like, I gotta make my
burkini.
Yeah, she gets a burkini.
Yeah, and the mom was like, you've never worn that for swimming, and she's like, I'm not wearing it for swimming. And she's like, well, you're not going to a party anyway. And she's like, yeah, okay.
Well, then, she's like, yeah, obviously, I'm gonna go party with my 10 atheist boyfriends, ma. And also, we get, she's now extra grounded again because of the tension, and now she has to meet with the Sheik.
No, she says, if you sneak out one more time, you're going to meet Sheik Abdullah.
Yeah.
And then she sneaks out immediately.
Yeah, and so the brother kept talking about the inventor, and she goes to try to track it. The brother, Bruno, like, uses the GPS data off the brother's cell to show where he went, and so Kamala tracks it down. There's two guys.
But even then, he says it like, I hacked his phone and got the GPS data, and she's like, did you just look at previously visited places in maps? And he's like, shut up.
Yeah. So she goes to the place at night. She takes out the two guards, just like throw them casually in front of the house and grows large to intimidate them. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, why don't you just tie yourselves together or act like you're tied together while I go investigate?
Like this is a cop show.
Yeah, and they're like, I guess so. Okay. And so she goes. She starts going to the building. She starts fighting laser.
And
bugs.
while she's scared, she's just like, "It's just like a boss. It's just like a boss in a video game."
Yeah. There's a lot of video game stuff, and it's almost at the point where I'm like, I wish there was a little bit less. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when you're 16, like being like, I got plus 10 healing or like leveling up. I'm like, okay, I can see it.
Yeah, it's enough. It's like almost enough to feel like too quippy, pandering kind of stuff.
Yes.
But I think it works for the most part.
The other thing is occasionally, like, when I was reading it, like, she uses the term, like, that she's gonna, like, squee at one point. I'm like, this is kind of dumb. But this is also written in, like, 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, like there's a Doge meme at some point, and it's like, that was topical in 2014.
It's also like part of a push for Marvel to start doing more YA style books.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that like that is very clear here.
I also like it reminds me sometimes of like Life is Strange, where you're like, this dialogue, but then you're like, this is actually how teenagers talk though. Like,
yeah.
But it's funny comparing it to, because Spider-Man is usually written by older white males like Stan Lee. Mm-hmm. So like even though they're meant to be like a relatable teen, they never go into topical references, so like they're always kind of like timeless in a sense, I guess.
Yeah.
While this is for the modern young generation, which is like an interesting difference.
Yeah, that this can date itself in like 20 years.
Yeah.
So she fights a whole bunch of robot bugs.
Robot laser bugs, like they shoot lasers at her, and she just starts matching them for big hands, and it's just about just matching for a few pages until she reaches the basement and she finds the brother.
Yep, Vic is just sitting in a corner with written above his head is property of the inventor.
Yeah, and it ends with a cliffhanger as more people come in.
Okay, a guy shows up wearing a tank top that says "I'm a bad guy" on it.
Yeah, and he has a laser pistol in his.
This is when I was like, I guess you would also have teens that were like, I have powers. I'm gonna be a bad guy now.
And so it's this guy, I'm a bad guy, shirt wearing guy, and he didn't rescue the guys up front because they weren't really tied up, but they could come with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cliffhanger for issue 5. All right, so the guy, I'm a bad guy, comes in and Carol starts like fighting.
Carol?
I'm like shit. Kamala.
You can get off the podcast. How dare you? Kamala,
How dare you
call her Carol?
But so he summons more robot. This guy's not the inventor, but he's higher up on the echelon, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And he summons more robot laser bugs. And Kamala starts fighting them, and she like smashes them, but she shrinks down to avoid them because they're overwhelming her. And she realizes that she's actually losing a fight. She has to leave.
I like that. She says that like the narration bubble is saying that she can't keep up. She can't heal this much damage and stay big and fight. It's too much. So it's like sometimes you got to know when to retreat. So that's what she does.
Yeah, I like that. There's a realization like I'm losing this fight.
Yeah, it's not just like she goes down there and she just beats the bad guy and she's like, I'm so good at this. It's like you have to learn to.
Wait, that guy was a bad guy?
Kamala just goes back home and she starts eating a shit ton of food out of her fridge because her powers make her.
Yeah,
really,
the most relatable scene for me. She realizes that when she heals, it uses a lot of energy. So she takes all the food out of the fridge, stuffs her mouth, and then falls asleep in a pile of cereal.
So Kamala just eats the shit out of her fridge, and her mom walks in like, "What the fuck? Like, what are you doing here? You're dressed in that burkini costume."
Yeah, so it's not. It's like halfway to a superhero costume. So it doesn't have like a logo or like a mask. It's just like a. Yeah, it's just like a
red tights.
It's kind of like a double bathing
and then the
suit,
blue. Yeah. Blouse.
So then the father sits down, talks to her after the mom freaks out, and the father's like, "You got to go see the sheik," I believe in the scene, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he tells her like about like her namesake, that he named her Kamala because Kamala means perfection, because it was a very difficult time. Like her mother had a difficult time birthing the brother, and so they thought they couldn't have any more children, so they were devastated. So it just adds more to the family dynamic. So it's not just like her dad comes and it's like, you gotta be better. It's like you can tell how much he loves and cares for her from every interaction that they have when he thinks she's doing wrong things.
Because with a lot of teen superheroes, the parents are just like an obstacle.
Yes.
But this makes it very clear that they are full characters.
Yes, which I really appreciate, that you're not just throwing the parents by the wayside as like they're the not fun part of this. Instead, it's like this is what she has to have the secret identity to protect.
Yeah.
So then she meets up with Bruno again. They basically start having a big training montage.
I really like this training montage. It's very wacky and cute, and the mannequin in the garbage.
Yeah, for one example is she tries to run, but she runs by making her legs so long she beats the race in a few strides. So Bruno's like, that's not really running fast. It's just make your legs long.
And he's like, but technically, yes, I guess.
She drinks and hangs out in his gerbil's cage.
Yeah,
and
so
one of the most important narration bubbles from this is because she's talking about how she's having to learn her limitations, learning how to work with the body and step against it. She says, "Good is not a thing you are; it's a thing you do."
As she's applying the Miss Marvel logo to her costume.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never be ready, but I can be ready enough.
Yep.
Yeah, and so she shrinks down to Ant-Man size to infiltrate the place again.
This is also when they get the super stretchy costume, and he just warns her, don't get it wet. And then she's like, I'm so sweaty, I'm probably already ruining this costume.
Oh, I also like there's a literature reference here. Like a lot of times when we read comics and they have literature references, it's usually European authors because that's what most of us have read.
Yeah.
And they actually have Rumi, probably the only Middle Eastern author that any white person could name. And just a quote from him about her saying, like, I'm exactly where I was meant to be. It's like that Persian guy Rumi said, wherever you are was circled on a map for you. And then she's tiny, and
she rides the robot bugs down into the basement where Vic is
I don't get how she controls them though.
She's like like Sally than like a fucking bucking horse.
Yeah, it's
Also, when she shoots the laser at the bad guy, it goes pew pew pew.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she begins and frees the guy, runs out of the guy using her long striding legs to get away fast.
Yeah, she gets Vic. They get out, and then the next day there's a big Kamala-esque dummy that's strung up with like X's over its eyes.
Outside the Circle Q.
From the store, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Kamala talks about how this guy thinks he can threaten us where we live. Miss Marvel has a message for him dressed up as Miss Marvel. This is Jersey City. We talk loud, we walk fast, and we don't take any disrespect. Don't mess.
No disrespect. No disrespect.
And I like that one person goes, word, and another goes, huh? What the hell is happening? And the teaser at the very end is the I'm a bad guy going to see the head, the inventor.
Yes, and he's a chicken head.
Yeah, he's a cockatiel.
He's an actual bird.
Did you say he's a cuck?
A cockatiel. It's like, you're hearing what you want to hear.
I say he's a cuck lord. I'm like, this is Mark Millar month.
If Sly goes too long without reading a cooking story, he starts to imagine it in his head. This guy's getting cooked.
So that's the first trade. Before we wrap up, we'll cover the last two trade. First switch is the next trade, just because it goes into more of Kamala. God damn it! Kamala's fanboy girlism.
So yeah, the only thing is, I just want to point out that this art is done by Jacob Wyatt, and I don't like it as much as Adrian Alfonso.
It's still good. But it's always a problem with swapping artists.
Yeah.
One gets associated with the look. And
Yeah.
This guy's very solid, but he's not. He doesn't have the look of Miss Marvel down pat, the one set by the previous artist. If it was not following that artist, like if this was replacing like a lot of the generic artists we've seen so far, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But like compared to, it's a step.
It's a big step down.
Yeah.
It's
I think it's still solid.
I think it's still solid too. The thing is, it's a lot more simplistic. Like there's a lot more scenes of just like one person on a page with a simple like pastel background.
Yeah.
So it starts with Kamala basically just expositing that the inventor's robots have been after her since their encounter, and
This is when she was a couch. This is when she becomes a couch.
it's when she's a couch, and they sense her with heat sensors, and she just like keep escaping, and she's just like still trying to. She hasn't made any progress in tracking them down, and it fast forwards to the next day where she meets with the Sheik, who she's convinced hates her, but he's actually pretty nice, and he talks to her like, you should. If you're looking to learn on how to help people, a teacher will present himself.
So instead, I will tell you to do what you are doing with as much honor and skill as you can. And then she goes, I can't believe it. I thought you were going to warn me about Satan and boys.
And he's like, I always do that. If you don't know it by now, I should lose my job.
Yeah.
So then as Kamala's walking home, she finds a giant pothole that has growling coming up from it.
It's like
She's
a car-sized pothole.
Yeah. She's like, this looks like a job for Miss Marvel. And she runs to the Circle Q and gets her costume from Bruno. And she climbs down there and she finds like a tropical swamp almost with like trees growing in it. And there's all these alligators that have like laser guns and spotlights on their heads.
And a satellite on one of them.
Yeah. And she sees a hologram of the inventor, who's the bird, and his name is Thomas Edison. And
these two issues that were the last two were I'm like, these were wonkier than the others by far.
This is going for more for pure comedy.
Yeah, this is straight comedy. So it's his origin is that there's some like evil scientist guy that accidentally mixed his pet cockatiel's like DNA in when he created this like robot hybrid.
No, it's a clone of Thomas Edison.
Yeah, his pet cockatiel got contaminated.
Oh, that's right.
I guess that makes him evil if Thomas Edison gets cloned with a cockatiel.
And if Edison was an asshole, which he might have been.
Yeah.
So basically, like now his creator is just like his like sad lackey.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, now these alligators are gonna kill you. And while they're facing down, all of a sudden their laser guns get broken by a sword, and she runs to attack the shadowy figure, and it's Wolverine.
Wow, who jumps at her. And then he had his claws out, and then he flips over her back, and then like he doesn't hurt her. And he's like, are you out of your mind, kid? I could have killed you.
And that's when she thinks, wow, such athletic, very claws, so amazing.
Yeah.
And she's really, really excited. She's like, this is my she said, I put you first in my fantasy hero team-up bracket. My Wolverine and Storm in Space fanfic was the third most upvoted story on Freaking Awesome last month. And Wolverine's like, what was the most updated? She's like, my Cyclops and Emma Frost romantic vacation. And he's like, this is the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
And
he fights an alligator shows up. He wrestles with it, and he's like, punch it like right here to pass out. And she tells him, it's like, I don't like punching animals. And he's like, you won't like being eaten by them either.
And to make that joke, then such claws joke even worse. He doesn't use his claws at all, really, in this issue, because this is when if you listen to our Death of Wolverine episode. This is when Wolverine's healing factor wasn't working, so he was killing himself by using his claws.
Yeah, and then they fall into like a standard kind of comic book trap where they get trapped behind bars, and he drains the sewer down a big slide. Yeah, he drains the swamp.
Slide's missing oops being canceled. Or missing oops.
So then, this is when Wolverine tells her that, like, I'm here looking for a girl who was abducted or ran away from his school that he thinks is down here in the sewers. And she also asks, like, oh, so, like, am I a mutant then? Like, you're Wolverine, you would know. And he's like, he's very quiet about it. And then they get interrupted with a giant alligator. I think they call it the Mega Gator or something later on, that is attacking them. And that ends issue 6. So it starts with exactly where we left off, with this giant gator fighting them, and Kamala is seemingly out of her element, but she toughens up, punches the giant mega gator in the eye, and then sets up Wolverine to use his claws and to slice up this whole thing. And they really do work together really well, and basically she helps Wolverine like beat it, and then pulls him out of the river.
Yep, and then they have some nice dialogue about how she brings up again, I don't like hurting stuff, even giant sewer alligators. I mean, is it possible to help people without hurting other people or, reptiles? And he goes, no, it ain't. It all circles around the hurt, I mean. Sometimes you avoid hurting other people, but it usually means you get hurt pretty bad instead. As he's like feeling his back pain. The pain's got to go somewhere, and she says, I don't want to believe that. And he says, you're young.
So then she basically has to carry Wolverine out, so she makes her legs really big and lets Buoyancy does the rest. And so she's basically giving him like a piggyback ride. And he's like, don't ever tell anybody about this. And she's like, actually, I've been Instagramming it the whole time, sorry.
Yeah.
And
Pictogrammed, copyright.
Yeah, it's pictogrammed, yeah. There's a lot of that kind of...
Yeah, MeTube, not YouTube.
Yeah.
And they go through like they travel through like the sewer system together. There's a cool like isometric cutaway of the whole facility as they're walking around.
I believe Joe Ciano posted this on Facebook, tagged you because it reminded me of X grades at one point.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, as I was seeing this, I'm like, this is really cool. I like this.
Yeah, Darryl wrote a comic as a kid that were basically just him characters going through a video game level, and that's kind of what
from like the side view. And they're just like talking about like he's asking her about like why do you wear Carol Danvers' outfit, and he warns her about wearing the mask.
Yeah, and he also like she talks about how like when she got her powers she became Miss Marvel literally, but now because Miss Marvel like saved the whole, Carol saved the whole city, but now she wants to be her own character. She's like, it took me a while to figure out that Miss Marvel could be me, that I didn't have to pretend to be someone else in order to wear the lightning bolt. And she's like, I do wear a mask, though, because I don't want my parents to have heart attacks and die.
Yeah. And they get into another room, and then the inventor's like, all according to Kikaku, and he makes the walls close in on them. And then she has to, because Wolverine's still injured and he can't heal, she has to, like, pull out the wires and electrocute herself.
So she does it, and she's like, I could heal it, I could take it, I trust myself, and it works. And then there's a very cute scene of her shrinking and Wolverine just raising her up into the open panel, and she crawls through there and she finds out that the inventor's power source, it's actually a person.
It's a mutant that Wolverine was searching for.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then they find out
they rescue her.
Yeah, they rescue her. And Wolverine, bursts through the wall now when he finds out that it's the girl, and he wakes her up, and she's like, there are others. And then they take her outside, and this is when Wolverine's like, come on, let's go. And she's like, no, I have to do this myself. This is my city. That kind of scene that we've, seen a lot where she's like, no, this team up is over.
Yeah, you go home, kid. Leave it to the professionals. And they're like, I'll be a professional someday. This is my city. I can't do nothing.
This is one of those scenes that does back up Phil's point because they don't have like a communication. She's just like, I'm going to be here in my city. You go back to doing this. We can keep the status quo of me being a small.
Well, actually, it is more than that though, because she also tells him that, like, you know, if I could survive getting gassed with weird green mist and wake up with superpowers, he's like, wait, you got your powers after the Terrigen bomb? She's like, what? He's like, nothing. I didn't say anything. Well, see you later. I'll be keeping an eye on you. And he actually calls the final scene of the issue. He calls the Inhumans. He calls Medusa, and he lets her know, oh, there's a new Inhuman character. You know, there's Miss Marvel.
The first good Inhuman character to ever exist.
Yeah,
that's literally why he calls. He's like, there's a good Inhuman. Put her on the show.
Yeah. And yeah, that's basically, he calls her and he's like, okay, now it's your problem, which, you know, it's not just leaving her on her own. He says he's going to do that, but really he's setting up for the Inhumans to come and take them under her wing or whatever. We don't know because the story is over.
Yeah, that's where we're stopping. If you want to find out next time why she's hanging out with Lockjaw, the dog that can teleport, you'll have to pick up the trade yourself.
Yes.
The only other decent Inhumans character.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Wow.
So I think we all know you guys would be more of this.
No, I wouldn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad because we spent so long with Carol, and I was thinking about this like yesterday, how it's kind of like you spend a long time with like an ex and you're like, you keep making excuses for things that you like about them, even though you're kind of like suffering whenever you're with them. And then Kamala comes along and you're like, wow, this is a lot of fun. Like, I can't believe how much fun this could be. Like, is this what like being happy's like again?
I don't know.
It's like, I don't hate
far.
Carol. I don't hate her, but like Miss Marvel was such a, I finally understood why people resonate so well with Spider-Man. Well, I mean, I kind of understood that after watching Homecoming, but it's like, this was a reintroduction to like how superheroes can be fun, how they can be like charismatic, and how they inspire people to do the right thing without me getting into like the weird like Law and Order type of stuff with like Superman.
Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed our, what is it, like an 8-part Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel saga?
It feels like the last year of my life.
Yeah, it really feels like forever. But there's still a lot of other great stuff on the network. It's a new month, so we have a new Patreon episode out. And I want to mention the Patreon because we also have a new Patreon exclusive show that Malcolm and Justin are doing an MC, they call it MC University, where at the $5 a month level, you get all our bonus episodes and all the other bonus episodes, and also the show that's only available there where they're going through and analyzing every single Marvel movie.
Wow, every single movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so the first one just came out. By the time this comes out, the second one will probably be out. But either way, Iron Man is definitely on there, and it's great, and everyone should listen. And
they're not going to start with the Hulk movies?
Hulk is after Iron Man.
Well,
Hulk,
okay, well,
was it
the
really?
Incredible Hulk is
Yeah.
after, but then there's the Eric Bana Hulk that's...
Yeah, I think that was
That's
the
not
one I
really
was thinking.
part
Wait,
of
are you,
it.
really? The first Incredible Hulk with what's his name?
The Ed Norton one is after Iron Man, yeah.
Oh, but the Eric Bana one was before.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
That was not related at all.
Okay.
Yeah. But, yeah, so everyone should go to patreon.com/flyingmachine, and our most recent Patreon was that the Jimmy Olsen makes Superman cry?
Yes.
Yes. So why would Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal, make him watch sad movies and make him cry?
Yeah, if you haven't listened to our Patreon episodes at all, you would think Jimmy Olsen's his friend based on the title of the book.
You would think.
You would think.
You'd think it's his best pal. But why would a best pal make you cry?
I don't know, Darryl.
I don't know,
Why do you make me cry all the time?
Fuck.
Okay.
See, we all agree on Darryl Smith.
Yes.
Good.
He's just so beautiful. You know, it's like looking right into the sun.
I'm beautiful. It's true.
Okay, so thank you guys for listening to Divisive Issues. I've been a teenage cannibalism experiment gone horribly wrong.
I've been the cockatiel.
I've been a couch.
And I've been such claws. Wow.
Stay in continuity.